This podcast is a proud member of the Unidentified Network.
Police in Las Vegas found themselves in the middle of a UFO mystery last month after
Ran across the yard.
To us. Big eyes, they have big eyes.
911, what are you reporting? We got someone or something crawling around out here. Did you see what it was? Was it a person or an animal? Or?
Yeah, one of my partners said they saw something fall out of the sky too, so that's why I'm kind of curious.
What? I don't know. Do you see him now, sir? Yeah, I'm looking right at him. Okay, hang on. He's right.
Is he in your yard, sir?
Yeah, God, he's big.
Okay, what's he doing in your yard?
Mythical Legends Podcast with your host Daniel Barnett.
Hey guys, and welcome to a live Mythical Legends podcast. I'm so glad to be here on another live podcast. We have a brilliant podcast lined up for you guys today, and I'm so glad we have been able to get them on the show. But first, I have a bit of an announcement for you. We're going to get our co-host on, and I'm just going to say this announcement you guys probably already know. Hey Chris.
How you doing?
I'm very, very well, mate. How are you?
Not bad. I'm waiting for the delivery boy.
So guys, I am very, very proud to announce that my Bigfoot life and my book has been released. It was published probably a few days ago, and I had my copy come through. We have had a few comments, Chris. So we've had Bill comment.
Hey, no, Bill.
And so we are so glad to kind of release my book, and so it's on our. Well, Bill, you have to bite yourself, my friend. Yes, Brian, that's absolutely right, my friend. That's Brian King's shot, Chris. Thanks, bud. And say yes. So, guys, go on to Amazon, search in My Bigfoot Life or Daniel Lee Barnett, and you guys will have a copy of my book. We would love for you guys to buy it. Love for you guys to see what we're doing here in the UK. But that's not why we're here. I just wanted to say a little bit about it. We're here to have a brilliant podcast, aren't we, Chris?
I believe so, yes. Yes.
So let's bring this guy on and have a beautiful and wonderful 45 minute. I don't know why I said that word. Don't know why.
It's the cap fits where it, the guy has a beautiful hairstyle.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Let's bring him on and let's have a brilliant podcast. Please welcome the host of Calling All Beings.
My man, my bald brother Chris, and my man Daniel. Thank you so much, man. It's great to see another bald brother here. He feels my pain. Daniel doesn't know what I'm going through yet, but hopefully he never will know.
No, it's early. We'll find out.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Mate, we're very, very pleased to have you, and I believe you know who this is. Yes. So we are going to have a brilliant podcast now and go into some real good details of some really interesting topics. So let's jump straight in there, DJ, and go with could you tell us about your fascination with UFOs?
So UFOs, I saw one when I was a kid, about 14 to 15. I was getting ready to leave New York, move down to Florida. We had this ranch that we owned, and another kid and I were kind of taking sort of a last walk around the ranch. It was kind of I lived in about 40 miles north of New York City, so it's kind of rural. It's not very lit up. All the streets don't have lights and so forth. That's right, my brother from another, B Sharp. Sup? He is a legend, man. B Sharp. I love that guy. Anyway, So we were just walking up the hill and back towards my house, and above the tree line, the horizon was quite high because the tree line was quite high. I saw something rise above the tree line that lit up the entire sky. And of course, the first words out of your mouth is "That's a effing UFO," is what you're thinking, because there's no Goodyear blimp that's flying over rural, New York on a Sunday night at that time. We agreed not to tell my parents about it. And then I had a 21-year Air Force career and about a 30-year career in government, and I never talked about it. My wife never knew that it happened. My father didn't know that it happened. My brother, I don't even know if my mother knew, and she's been gone a long time. So to make a long story short, when David Fravor came out and told his story on, I don't know if it was 60 Minutes first or Joe Rogan, I was already retired from the Air Force, and I said, you know what? I'm going to talk about this. And my MMA podcast of about a decade, I turned into a UFO podcast. And that was it. I just went off on my own. Told my co-hosts, love you guys. See you later. And I started, and one of my first guests was Andy McGrillen from That UFO podcast, a Scottish brother who lives in England. And then I found Nathan, and Calling All Beings was born because he called into that show. And I was like, hey, mate, I want to connect with you after the show. And that was that. So.
Wow. Really, really amazing story. And say that UFO sighting, that must have been something.
It really was so brief, because as I saw it rise above the tree line, it started to float in a direction away from me. And because the horizon was so high, I couldn't keep visual contact with it. Because even when I walked all the way up to the street level, I was sort of picture like a little bit of a valley, and you're walking up a driveway, and you're going to end up on sort of a main road there, which is the road I lived on right across the street from this ranch. You were never going to be able to get to the level of the horizon because the tree line was so high. So that's all I saw of it. And I actually, one of the very first UFO episodes I did was to call this kid who now lives in Long Island and have him on the show so we could go over it together. But yeah, that was it. I mean, it really, my experience was not very prolific compared to many, many other experiencers that I've spoken with. It's kind of like somebody who saw a Bigfoot run across a ridge line and then disappear over the other side is not the same as someone who had an encounter where in their campsite, or, these thousands of encounters that I've consumed and you've consumed on all these different shows. It's a different level, and mine is at a very, very low level. But the interest was there. And now that I was no longer in the Air Force, and you're no longer worried about, yeah, mate, I don't think you need to be flying anymore if you're talking about UFOs. I mean, because that's, someone send you to the flight dock, and next thing you know, you're off the flying schedule. So I wasn't going to be that guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's really, really, really interesting. Would you say, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, that's the same reoccurring thing that the pilots say. They see something, they keep quiet about it because they get ridiculed, and then the bosses start taking it seriously. So, yeah.
And it's a different climate now, Chris, right? Because we're in 2024. I retired at the end of 2011. Let's say the beginning of 2012, if you like. And by the way, I was stationed in England for 3 years. That's why I love England so much. So I was at RAF Mildenhall, if you guys have heard of that. I was stationed there with the 7th Special Operations Squadron. So anyway, the climate now I think is better. I have seen Air Force instructions that say that you can report these things, and there are reporting instructions out there. I've seen them from Air Combat Command. My command, Air Force Special Operations Command, now has a procedure, and I'm sure Air Mobility Command has a procedure as well. So it's not as bad now as it was then. But But I have to imagine that there still could be an issue. I don't know the exact climate in the squadron today for somebody to come back and say something. But then again, if they did say something and they got sent to the flight dock, then now you could start going to the IG and saying, you know what, we have a procedure that says if you see something, report it. I reported it, and now I'm off the flying schedule. So if you're a squadron commander and you wanted to put your thumb on somebody who reported a UFO, then you could find yourself under investigation if that person went to the IG.
Yeah, there's actually reports, a refresher report, if you like, coming out. I read it this morning about UFOs interfering with nuclear missile launches. Obviously, I'm guessing they're test launches and that. But yeah, the fact that it's become so mainstream, like you say, it's 2024. We could all talk to each other, and everybody's a lot more open about it. It's yeah.
It was kind of laughable during the congressional hearings when they asked. I know Ron Moultrie was one. I'm trying to remember the other Pentagon official that they asked. Are you aware of the Maelstrom nuclear incident? Basically, where there was a UFO that hovered over a island at Maelstrom Air Force Base in, I want to say it was 69 or 67, the year of my birth. I can't remember precisely. Robert Salas is the famous captain who had his missile battery shut down by a UFO. And Ron Moultrie, we've never heard of it. I'm like, you're such a liar. You're such a liar. You're going to tell me that something happened to a nuke, it got shut down, and that didn't make it all the way up to the SecDef and to the Joint Chiefs? Please. Come on.
So a lot of people, including myself, can kind of it's interesting to know, how do you go about researching? Oh, hold on. Had a comment come in there.
Ooh. No, that's a really good one, but thank you, Facebook user. I will ask Deb, our researcher on So Calling All Beings, essentially is myself, Nathan, and Deb's is our researcher. And then we have an English guy named Frank, the UFO thinker that comes on when able. And I will ask Deb, because she's really, really smart about everything that's happened at RF Alconbury and the Rendlesham incident out there at RF Bentwater. So I will look at that. Just connect with me either on Facebook or Twitter, and I'll try to get you an answer on that.
Okay.
So, return to my original question is, how do you go about researching UFOs? Is like you have a specific kind of research for Bigfoot, then you have your ghosts, but no one really talks about the UFO side. What do you think, DJ?
So what's interesting, there's another English guy who's prolific in this regard called Vinny Adams. I don't know if you guys know Vinny Adams. He has a show called Disclosure Team. You're going to get to meet him, Daniel. And by the way, I'm honored that Daniel is going to join our roundtable. We've done a couple of these British invasion roundtables, and they all would have a British theme band that they would be associated with. And we talk about the bands and play some music, and then we do the roundtable. So in this case, though, it's just going to be the UK, Ireland, Scotland roundtable. And thankfully, Daniel is going to join us and represent. So basically, I am not a UFO researcher. I am also not a Bigfoot researcher. I am a UFO analyst, and I'm a Bigfoot analyst, which means that I take in a lot of information that comes from books, that comes from interviews, that comes from events. That comes and when I say interviews, I mean interviews with premier thinkers on the topic, experiencers, and then like you guys, I've listened to all of Sasquatch Chronicles and all of Sasquatch Odyssey and all of my Bigfoot sighting, with Vic Cundiff. So I've listened to everything that's out there. The entire holidays, that's all I did was listen to. So I kind of approach the Bigfoot UFOs the same way. I read some, and I do a lot of interviews, and then I take all this information in, and then I sort of develop my hypotheses or hypothesis as it relates to one topic around it. So that's how I consider myself. And I think for those of us that are like me, that are analysts, I think there is some value there, because when you are a researcher, you can, in some cases, and when we get into, we can get into this a little bit more later, you can follow a certain dogma, and you can sometimes be blinded by other experiences and other thought processes, and then just sort of continue down your line. But like John Bindernagel told Wes Germer, he said, Wes, you really, because Wes was quite dogmatic earlier on in that show. This is a monster. This is it scared the hell out of me and my brother. This is a monster. It's an ape. It's evil. It's this. It's that. And then he started to really open up his aperture. And if you ever listen to some of those episodes with James Bobo Fay and Wes Germer, you can see the metamorphosis of Wes from back then to now. Well, I feel the same way about UFOs. This is ETs. I don't know. Is it ETs, or are they maybe ultra terrestrial? You know what I mean? Or are they cohabitating with us on this planet in a different dimension, and they can pop in and out of our dimension? That's what people have reported. So I like to say, and if you listen to Matt Knapp's Bigfoot Crossroads this week, it may not be this or that. It may be this and that.
Yeah, and say that's a really, really interesting kind of way to it, I think. So
can I say
on to
one more thing to answer your question more directly? The folks that do this, because you were asking about research, and I'm not a researcher, but I've talked to Vinnie Adams, I've talked to Deb. They are searching the internet, searching for databases, searching for documents that have been surfaced and posted online. People who have interviewed actual experiencers, government documents that have come out, and you start building out your sources. You get to a David Grush, you get to a Luis Elizondo, and these people who have bona fide proof that have testified before Congress, and now legislation was built on some of that evidence. Well, that's you can take to the bank, because all of us have heard people we 100% believe, and that's most of the experiencers. And then there's a smaller number that we're kind of like, I don't know. You might have heard someone on a podcast and decided to mimic their event and just change some details. I'm sorry, but that's how I understand that they do it, is a lot of internet research as opposed to Bigfoot, where it's field research for the most part.
Yeah, definitely. And even in the Bigfoot world, say I'm more in the Bigfoot world than UFO, where you don't have to be out the field to research. You got a laptop in front of you. You can do just as much research there than you do out in the field. And kind of in my opinion, you researching Bigfoot is that, as in out in the field, is only that from what you can do in proper researching. Say I've done most of my research on my laptop, and say I'm out probably every other weekend, I would say, but it's like that's not the point. You don't have to be out in the forest. You can do, which is exactly what you're saying, which is incredible. Wouldn't you agree, guys?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
I agree. I do want to mention one guy. There is one field researcher I want to tell you about. This guy's name is Carl Vibe, and I believe he goes by Carl the Crusher. And we had him on. I want to get him on again, because Vinnie Adams just had him on, and he came on, and he was so engaging from the first second of the podcast. But he goes out to places like Skinwalker Ranch and goes to petroglyphs and searches out where there have been scrawlings of UFO type things on cave walls. He's that kind of guy. So he's doing real UFO field research from a historical perspective, right? He has like 3 million YouTube subscribers. So when someone told me that when he was about to come on the show and said he had like 2 million subscribers, I was like, That was a year ago. He's got 1 million more now. I was like, dude, you have more subscribers than the population of Liechtenstein and Luxembourg combined. I mean, like, I found 3 countries that this guy, 3 European countries, he had more subscribers than. So anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm gonna
Carl
check
Vibe, check him out. UFO Field Research.
Yeah. So kind of moving on to your podcast, could you tell everyone a little bit about your podcast, what you do, and I would love to hear about that Bigfoot Roundtable that I watched about 15 minutes of and then went to sleep because it was 1 o'clock.
So, Calling All Beings, like I said, early on in the, I had a couple, I broke off from my MMA podcast brothers because they didn't want to do UFOs. And we are UFOs, Bigfoot, and paranormal. So we do all 3, because I'll get to that in a second. So when I got Andy McGrillen was very kind. He was a big show. He's one of the biggest shows in the UK at the time. And he came on and graced me with his presence twice. And the second time I got a caller, some American guy called in, big fan of Andy, didn't know anything about me, didn't care about me. And so he asked a question to Andy on air, and then he was just so engaging and spoke so well. And just, he's like one of those guys, when you speak, like your ears open up and you're just kind of like this. He's that kind of guy, the kind of guy I'll never be. Right. So we call him Money Nathan. So anyway, we DM'd one another. We had a phone conversation. I said, yeah, I'd like you to join me as my co-host on air. He came up with Calling All Beings. We had taken on we've been through several co-hosts, but Debs is the one that has stuck around and just been rock solid for us. So from there, we said we want to do something that's interesting. We want to have interesting conversations, but we want it to be fun. We want people to come in and relax. So like an electrical sine wave, sometimes we'll dip down into some very serious conversation. We'll come up, we might say something funny. We'll go back down into seriousness again. And at the end, the person who came is going to feel really appreciated for their time. They're going to feel really welcomed, loved, if you don't mind me using that term. And we're going to try to have an interesting, thought-provoking conversation out of it without trying to be a gotcha journalist, which a lot of people will pretend to be. People that didn't even go to journalism school will get on a podcast and try to grill somebody. And we don't do that. That's not happening. Will we sometimes ask a question that's a little bit difficult if the person is controversial? Sure, but not to excess. So, and that's 2.5 years now or so. That's Calling All Beings. At some point, about a year ago, I had already, so just to tell you this, I was born the same year as the Patterson Gimlin film in 1967. I don't remember the first time that I saw it, but I know when I got access to the internet, I started to watch that film over and over. I would watch that film when I was able to search. I never for a moment, ever for a second, thought that wasn't 100% real creature that I was looking at. And that was my feeling. That was my empathic feeling. It's not scientific. I don't care if you think it's scientific. That my feeling was that's not a person in a suit. That is a real creature that I'm looking at right here, walking away from these gentlemen. Okay. So I was not any sort of a Bigfoot fanatic until Nathan sent me an episode a year or so ago of Sasquatch Chronicles. Like a lot of us discovered this through Sasquatch Chronicles. And I absolutely fell in love with the topic. And that was it. I am now as into Bigfoot as UFOs. And these guys will tell you, because neither Nathan or Debs are as into it as I am. They're into it, but not at the level that I am. And thankfully, all these people have come on with us, from Brian to, Matt Knapp was actually part of our show for a while. And Sybil, all the folks with the round table, Doug Hychek. We had Doug on once, and Doug was just funny and engaging, and he got the show from the first minute. He knew what we were doing, and he was funny. And now I can call him and just talk about motorcycles, or talk about the other night we had I ran my Bigfoot. I said, "Tell me if I'm out of my mind. These are my Bigfoot hypotheses. Tell me if I've lost it." And thankfully, he said, "No, yeah, you're well thought out." So I was like, "Cool."
Same with Amy as well.
What's that?
Same with Amy Boo as well. She was all your guests was amazing on that table, mate. I gotta say although it was about 1:15 in the morning for me, I was like, I can't. So I was watching about 25 minutes of it, and it was amazing. And say all your questions were just amazing. That all your guests put in, and say they all did amazing.
Thank you. Like the first time I called Sibylla Irwin and had a conversation with her, I was like, "Oh my God, I'm on the phone with Sibylla Irwin. I can't believe this." I mean, I'd heard her on podcasts. I knew she was legendary. I knew I had heard podcasts with her and her research partner, Ronnie Powell, who a lot of people know Sibylla. They don't know Ronnie, but they're like sisters from other misters. Amy was a result of Doug. Doug's like, "You need to get in touch with this young lady, Amy Boo. You need to get in touch with Scott Tompkins from the Bigfoot Mapping Project." Scott Tompkins, turns out, was born in the same hospital as me in Peekskill, New York, and grew up nearby. And Amy, man, just such a lovely person. I was just chatting with her last night. So you meet one person, and like Tim from Bigfoot Influencers. He wrote the book Bigfoot Influencers, Tim Halloran and Dana. We had them on our show. I had been on their show. They introduced me to Doug. And then you all of a sudden make friends with these people, which is what this is all about. Everybody who's on podcasts now, it won't last forever. At some point, you will not be cool anymore. Nobody will want to listen to you anymore. There will be newer, better, more exciting hosts than you. But what you will have is the friendships that you've made. That's what this is really all about. It's not about arguing and fighting with people and competing with other podcasts like an idiot. It's really because, like, Chris, do artists in the Louvre compete for who has the best painting?
Not that I recall.
Right?
No, I've not seen any Facebook arguments. No.
Exactly. You go into the Louvre and everybody can have a different favorite painting. They're all beautiful in their own way. Like this podcast is beautiful in its own way. It doesn't have to be Brian's podcast or Wes's podcast or Vinny Adams' podcast or Calling All Beings. It's its own thing that's authentic to Chris and you, Daniel. Obviously, Daniel, you started the podcast. So that's really what, to me, a lot of it is about making friendships. And I've made I have a whole new family as a result of coming on air and deciding to talk about UFOs, cryptids. And I had an amazing paranormal guest last week that had us just smiling as I went off to sleep.
Wow. And say, DJ, I will share your kind of Amy kind of helped me from the very, very beginning. She was kind of the person who I did this very first podcast with. And say she's incredible.
Lovely.
And then with Brian and Doug and Scott, with all of them, and say I've been more in contact with Amy, Brian and Doug, and say Brian is now, as he mentioned, a guest at my Bigfoot conference, and say Chris will be kind of organizing with me, and kind of
Organizing is not the best word. It's a shambles at the moment, but it's coming together. It's coming together.
But it takes such cojones to do what you guys are doing, because Nathan and I have talked about it, but you guys are actually doing it. There's so much involved in that, putting yourself out there, man.
I think if the conference was like a truck or something like that, I'm the engine, but Daniel's the driver.
And say
Oh, yeah.
but all those guests are incredible to have on, and say I've had Doug on my show, and say that was before I chose to go on YouTube and kind of do that. But yeah, they're all brilliant, and say mate, that was a really good roundtable. So thumbs up for you, mate. Well done.
Thank you.
And say yeah. So we'll be back after the break. We're now going to have an advert on from the Unidentified Network, and we'll be back in a very short while to have a second part of our amazing conversation. We'll be back soon, mate.
I'm Harlem, and I run the channel I Talk Cryptids over on YouTube. Every week, I post videos on the cryptids, the unexplained, the paranormal, from topics such as UK big cats to the British woodwose. So please join me as I try to uncover the truth behind England's most elusive creatures.
There's Harlem. He's a really good member of our team, isn't he, mate?
Yeah.
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 Say, I have no idea where DJ's gone.
There he
I'm
is.
right here, brother.
There is. And say yeah. So it's Harlem. Myself and Chris co-own a team called the UK BRT, and Harlem's a member of that team up in Scotland. Kind of owns that team, yeah. And well, he's not quite up in Scotland. He's kind of
he's a lot closer than we are.
Yeah.
But he's the most active team player we've got right now.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah.
He is,
In terms of what, like field research or what?
Yeah, field research and research and
and say we now have satellite teams where we have several kind of teams around the UK, and Harlem's a manager for kind of the top part of the UK. So you're talking Scotland and kind of he's 16, I believe. Is he, Chris?
Yeah, 16 last time.
16.
Yeah.
That is so awesome, man.
The knowledge he has, DJ, it's incredible too. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
I love it that age is not a barrier to anything these days. You know, it's just people, you know, like I'm about to relaunch a pod about MotoGP, about motorcycle racing, and the racer is a 16-year-old. And people are like 16. I'm like, yeah, 16. Like, yeah, she's done color commentary for Moto America Racing, you know, when she was hurt from, you know, getting hurt on her bike. I mean, it's not an impediment to being out there and being respected for your work. And I got another lady, she's a MotoGP journalist. She's in her 20s. And she's like, when I told her that was going to put together this podcast again with Kayla, the 16-year-old, she's like, hell yeah, let me get in on that. So, I mean, I love that. So I think that's great that Harlan is only 16. How old are you, Daniel?
I'm 14.
Awesome. That is so awesome, man. And that makes it even more cool that you're coming on our roundtable, man. That is just going to be, I'm thrilled that you're going to do this. I can't wait now.
So from moving on to a completely different topic, my favorite topic now, kind of keeping now on the Bigfoot side of stuff. Going back to something you said earlier, is you lived in the UK. So, as you have lived in the UK before, and be careful what you say here, what is your opinion on UK Bigfoot?
Well, I don't have one. I'm interested party. I'm listening. You know, I've listened to some podcasts before about UK Bigfoot and some experiences that people have had, and so I'm here listening, wanting to learn about it. So, educate me.
Do you think the UK has enough land?
Sure, obviously, yeah, of course, yeah. I mean, they're seen all over in these. People have seen them in suburban neighborhoods in the U.S. So why Why couldn't that be in the UK? I mean, I've gone and done survival training in the UK. There's plenty of land for Bigfoot to survive and subsist, just like they're in Arizona, for God's sakes. So
Yeah.
why couldn't they be in the UK?
And say I think what a lot of people think is we are known as just, and with Bill Rigby here, yeah mate, you are right there. And say my point is people think we are just an island, and we are, don't get me wrong, but when I'm out in the field and I'm stood where I captured my eDNA, I have no idea if you know about that, and I will. Yeah, we'll go on to that in a second. And I'm just stood in this. We got fields and fields in front of us, and even when myself and Chris, was it last weekend, Chris? Were we out together last weekend? I got a feeling it was.
Yeah.
So we're out in a forest where we're doing a new project, and it is just land, just forest. And so when you actually stand there, you're like, yeah, it's possible. And say I'm on opinion wise, I'm more on the flesh and blood side, just for kind of what we found, but I'm open to it all. So to round it up very quickly then, DJ, because I've told this story hundreds of times, but
please,
my 20 or 21 weeks ago, this was, myself and my research partner, we found an 18-inch footprint. Okay?
Oh my, that's a big one, man.
Yes.
That's a big one.
Yes.
Wow.
We got cast of it, and we took eDNA of it. Something you should know about me: if I want to do something, we're gonna do it. And Chris is very prone to that now. And say I emailed around and kind of got a company and sent the eDNA offer. It usually takes about 6 weeks. I was emailing back and forth, and they said, "I'm sorry, this is gonna take an extra week." I go, "Okay, it's weird. Okay, maybe just." And to my surprise, and to my team's surprise, now the eDNA came back Old World Monkey and Great Ape DNA.
Old World what?
Old World Monkey.
And Great Ape DNA?
And Great Ape DNA.
Wow. Okay, and what was the precursor? Did you give them any sort of lead into what they would be looking at, or?
Not really, and just so this comment here is my nan, and she is probably my main. No, not probably. She's my
Hi,
main
Jill.
kind of my main research partner, and say yes, all kind of the dirty work. So you're talking casting, or that gets your hands really dirty. She does. I delegate that to her.
So he's already a good leader, Jill, right? He knows how to delegate to the troops. I can see that. That's
awesome. So the scientist stood there and went, "Holy crap, this boy may have done it. This boy may have actually found Bigfoot." And it's you're like, a scientist doesn't say that. They don't. It's not often that scientists will come up and say, "This boy's found Bigfoot." Right. And when that eDNA come back, and I'd say the story isn't the eDNA. It's kind of how the eDNA isn't my story, but it's something that's very, very interesting that I've taken to every researcher I know, Doug, Amy, Dr. Meldrum, all of them, and they've said, I have no idea. So it's
Joe. No, Joe, you want quality time with your grandson, and he's doing big things for real.
So yeah, mate. What's your opinion on it?
No, I think this is amazing that you've made this fine. This is this is huge that you found that, and I'm hoping that you can find more and then cross reference the next one you find, and then you send it, and maybe you send it to a different lab if if the finances work out, and then see if what their conclusion is.
Someone's asking here, have you looked into possible ape escaping from zoos, private, public, or circuses as outside possible? So we are going to replicate the research, the findings. We're going to see if we actually get the same thing back, same results. And we have investigated. Yeah, there's certainly no reports of escaped monkeys. We did have an escaped monkey 4 weeks ago, but it's 500 miles away from us, and it was a Japanese monkey, which has got its unique DNA stream. So yeah,
it's the fact of even so the DNA is found last August, so that's when we first picked the DNA up. Now, what we had to go through is I had to remember if I was wearing the same shoes that I went to the zoo about 3 weeks before, and I wasn't, because I didn't have these shoes then. But I'm like, so it's even something just as simple as that, but we haven't. Yeah, it is worth the investigation, but it's the fact of we have looked into all this and gone and multiple times. If I could prove that it's wrong, I will, because I want the truth, and I haven't. I'm the very, very kind of like, if it's fake, then bin it. It's no use. But to actually have then that to go, oh, hold on a minute, we can't find an answer for it. At this point, we're slowly doing work on it, and before we actually get another answer, it's gonna take a while. So we've put it to bed for a while, but every time I tell that story, I have no idea, and that's from my true heart that I have no idea what this could be.
Did the folks that you sent the footprint to, like, I mean, 18 inches is a pretty big footprint. I don't know if gorillas' feet are that big or if they're the same shape as what a Sasquatch would have. So that, I mean, did anybody say anything about the footprint? Because that, is indicative also. It's evidence.
So I myself and Chris had a chat with Dr. Meldrum probably a month ago now, Chris, was that? And say we've had a chat to him about it, and he's gone, this changes my whole perspective on what I think Bigfoot is. He went, I truly have no idea. The man of Bigfoot, the man of science of Bigfoot told me that, and I'm going, so I go, are we doing everything? He said, you're doing everything right. The fact that he's gone as far as to actually help us with this is beyond me. But I think it's pretty incredible that one of my dear friends and the person who kind of runs Bigfoot is telling me that he doesn't know. So from there, I don't know. And say even in the Bigfoot research team, we have no idea, and I think that is a very, very good place to be in. You have no idea, and there's no answer for it. And say, of course, we would all want to know the answer, but it's looking like it's going to be one of those things that we're just unable. It's just something that we're not able to answer, and I hope that's not the case. But if it is, okay, and say
won't be from lack of trying, that's for sure.
Yeah,
and you're still young. I mean, there's more finds that you're probably going to have, and more evidence that you can gather that could support that the finding of the lab. So I think you're in a great place, actually.
And say the fact that this lab didn't charge me, Ethan.
Woo! I love that.
They also found wild boar DNA.
That's interesting.
That is interesting.
For me is, because we've been to the forest and can find a wild boar is very evident when it's foraging through the forest or in the crops nearby or whatever. Can't find a spot of it, but there it is. The DNA, it's there. So it's a deepening mystery, but
It is a mystery wrapped around an enigma for sure. But I do agree with you guys from the standpoint, was there human DNA in it? Yeah, because so one thing I want to say, I can't stress enough that the guy called Steve that was on with Matt Knapp on Bigfoot Crossroads yesterday, he is in the field of research that he's in is immunogenetics. So he's some sort of an immunogeneticist. Okay. So he is born and raised in Appalachia, has moved back to Appalachia. And so he is steeped in the tradition and lore of Bigfoot, of cryptids, of all these fairy lore, all these sorts of things. But he's a serious scientist who's had a career in science, I believe, at the University of Florida, but he has since moved back to Appalachia, and I assume that he is working from there. So he has that very Southern way about him, but a very scientific mind. And the things that he was saying, he said he read the Melba Ketchum study, and he thought that it was a good study and things were done well. Some of the things that she said after kind of are things that you shouldn't say because the scientific community would look at you like, but that the test, the samples, what she collected and what was tested in her results, he said he thought that was a good study and showed what you said, that one of the mother was part human and I don't even remember. I haven't read her study. He said he's read every bit of that study. So, along with, he said, read everything that he could get his hands on Bigfoot since the 90s. But he's just not involved in the community because he doesn't want to deal with the mudslinging and fighting and throwing of feces at other groups. For my part, I'll say what I've said to Doug, and what my position is on this is quite simply this. If we were using the court of law as a standard, and you look at something like the Patterson-Gimlin film, as Dr. Meldrum ad nauseum has done an hour-and-a-half dissertation on this, and you take the foot tracks, you take the film, you take hair that people have found, you take all these different, and plus all of these sightings is evidence. Is it proof? It's not proof. It's evidence. And in a civil proceeding, it's the preponderance of the evidence suggests can land you a victory in a civil court. But when you talk about a criminal trial, I would say all of the evidence, all of the sightings, all of the narratives from professional people and people who are scientists and people who are law enforcement and military and everyone you can imagine, beyond a reasonable doubt, this exists as a flesh and blood creature. In my mind, beyond it, just the Patterson-Gimlin film alone is beyond a reasonable doubt. Then you add the thousands of interviews and thousands of pieces of evidence and footage and everything else that people have experienced since 1967. Beyond a reasonable doubt, this is 100% walking, breathing, defecating, eating, omnivore creature. So that's without question. If someone were to ask me, is there a connection to UFOs, or is there a connection to a paranormal aspect? I would say we don't have the evidence to prove that. Is it within the realm of possibility? Because Daniel used the word impossible before. Yes, it's within the realm of possibility, but we don't have any proof that Bigfoot has walked through a portal. Is it possible that it has? Yes, it's possible, but we don't have any proof that it has. Is it possible that that these Bigfoots have died in a particular forest, and like a human, when they have haunted houses, that they may haunt that forest? Is it possible that they may manifest the way a ghost does? Yes, it's possible. We don't have any proof of it, but it's possible. And I know a researcher that Doug Hychek that you guys know, that everybody knows, and everyone, and has got 2 decades of field research, believes he and a research partner had seen a ghost of Bigfoot after many years out in the field doing this. Someone that everybody respects. He's not going to say his name, and I'm not going to ever say his name, because he doesn't want people to think that he's in this camp. And I'm not even going to name the camp, because the camps are just stupid. They're silly. There doesn't need to be a name for a camp. Yes, it's a flesh and blood creature. Does it have abilities that we don't understand? It seems that it does. Do we have proof of it beyond a reasonable doubt? No. But there's some evidence to suggest it. People have seen glowing eyeballs. Do I think every one of them is lying? No, I don't. There's other people say, I didn't see glowing eyeballs. Okay, well, some people have. So I think that's a well-reasoned position.
The only one you didn't answer is the one question there that came in. Out of the box question: what do you think of UFO sightings connect to Bigfoot? Do you think there's? I think I know what you're going to say. It's
so it's what Matt Pruitt says. He said if orbs are in the woods and deer are in the woods, do we know that there's a connection between UFOs between deer and orbs? The same way that we see people are out in the woods looking for Bigfoot and they see orbs appear. Do we know? We don't know that there's a connection. Is it possible? There's a possible connection, but we don't have any proof of that. What I will say about UFOs is this, and this is very important, coming from the UFO community. If you believe that people have been abducted by UFOs, and I do, because I've talked to enough experiencers, just like you guys have talked to enough Bigfoot experiencers, I absolutely believe them. Not that 100% of them are telling the truth. Some of them may be having it in a dream, right? Okay. But there are some actual cases, not the least of which is Travis Walton and Barney and Betty Hill and others, right? If it's possible, and even in David Paulides' film with the UFO connection, that whole group of workmen said it picked up an elk, a craft off the ground, just levitated this elk and flew off with it. And all these people saw that happen. So is it possible that a Bigfoot has been abducted? It's possible. If they're interested in humans and studying humans and taking eggs and biological matter to try to replicate something that humans have, which there may be 1 or 2 species of ETs that have done this, or at least one. If you believe all these experiencers, and I believe that some of them are telling the truth, then it's possible that Bigfoot has also been abducted, because they would want to see, what is this thing? We can control it. They sit there and freeze, you can't move. I mean, there's an assistant. This guy was former assistant U.S. attorney named Terry Lovelace, former Air Force member, said, me and fellow airman Toby from Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri were abducted at this place called Devil's Tower or something like that. I don't remember the name of it. It was like in Arkansas, I think, where they went camping and they were abducted. And this guy was an assistant U.S. attorney. He waited till he retired, and then he told his story. Before that, you know that story, Terry Lovelace?
It rings a bell. I've said to Daniel before, there's so many things to look at. You got to select your favorite, and Bigfoot's fine. But it does raise a question or raise a point. I think it was last year, the orca in the plowed field in Canada, something like 300 miles away from the ocean.
What?
Yeah. What? Google it. Yeah, you can Google it. It was some news report.
Lying in
the field. Was it last year?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's weird.
I've just gone and told everybody, and it's going to turn out to be a hoax. Look, but yeah,
I didn't know that, but wow. They apparently think they found that elk too, dead nearby, not too far away from where it was abducted from. But yeah, so I think it's possible that they could have been abducted. I can't draw any connection just because we don't have evidence of it, but it's not out of the realm of possibility. But I know what we know. We don't know what we don't know. But if you just close your mind and say, I'm just looking at flesh, blood, there's nothing else about Bigfoot to know, then that will drive your research.
Yeah.
And the fact is that people have seen them do things that don't make sense. And so, yeah, I think we should look at it and talk about it and discuss it. And if possible, research it if there is a way to do so. Keep your mind open to a degree.
I'm completely on with you, DJ, and I go with if someone said, Daniel, come with me, and I saw and they showed me a Bigfoot jumping into a portal, I'll believe it immediately. And if they showed me a UFO coming down, picking a Bigfoot up, yeah, I'll believe that. I'll believe anything if I see it. But until they show me, I ain't gonna believe it. And that's not saying I won't research it. I just won't believe it. And kind of, I have a few kind of theories on, let's say, the cloaking side. And I would say, I'll briefly say it, where,
please,
if we change the word cloaking to camouflaging, you've then got something else. We have animals alive today that camouflage. You've got chameleons, you've got certain spiders, and you've got other different animals that are copying and doing and changing stuff, which it goes into deep detail. But if you put vegetation and camouflaging together, you've then got cloaking, where if you say the word cloaking, to me, sounds like something from Harry Potter. But when you go to and where if you've got really high ferns and that, so if a Bigfoot or a deer or something will put mud, grass around them, and they put a deer carcass on, and they bend down, you can't see them. It's impossible. So you go, that is possible, and that you can see happening. I can't see Bigfoot going, hold on a minute, I'm going to put my invisibility cloak on, and yeah, and
from
and
Mr.
run away.
Lavander's, is that the shop where you get the
once? And I honestly can't see that happening, and say I can't see Bigfoot casting a spell on him, or on itself, and going,
yeah, Daniel,
disappear.
Add into what you said there with a little bit of infrasound causing the optic nerve to vibrate. Yep. It's people are going to say that thing just cloaked in front of me, but maybe it's all
that's
a theory.
An interesting hypothesis right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
the thing what I say though, instead of saying I don't believe, because I don't say I believe in Bigfoot like I believe in God. I just say I believe Bigfoot exists, as opposed to I believe in. It has a religious a connotation that causes. I mean, like belief doesn't exist in science and this kind of thing. So I just say it. I don't know. So if people say, do they have the ability to cloak? I don't know. I just don't know. There's a lot. And I recommend you guys listen to this guy, Steve, because he said, we don't know anything about this creature. We don't know anything, he said. And I'm going to see if I can get this quote. I might have to put on my glasses to read it here. He said,
you are bang on there, and say I love your two glasses, girl.
Yeah. Well,
Going
I'm
on,
going to
by the
get
way.
these in prescription, so I won't have to do this anymore. But he said, humans are. So Matt was asking him about why there are all these different interpretations of Sasquatch and Bigfoot, and people are looking through these different lenses. And Steve said, "quote Humans are fear based, and I find that the more committed a given person is to a belief system, the more willing they are to shut out parts of observable reality." Let me repeat that because I stumbled. Humans are fear based, and I find that the more committed a given person is to a belief system, the more willing they are to shut out parts of observable reality. So for a lot of things, I just say, and he said, we really don't know anything about this creature. There's very little that we know. He says, I know how to drive a car, but I don't know how an internal combustion engine. He says, I don't know how a computer works, but I know how to use it. There's so much that we just don't know about how it does what it does. So that's kind of how I look at Bigfoot. I don't personally, I don't think right now we just don't have evidence to suggest that they're cloaking. Like you said, it may be a perfectly natural way that they're doing it, using, like you said, grass and possibly a deer carcass or something like that. And then what you said about the optical nerve and infrasound, Chris, that is really interesting. I haven't heard that one.
No, I've kind of been waiting. I got a little theory, kind of on a par with what Daniel has. That certain mammals can release an oil from the pores of their skin, which will reflect light that matches its surroundings. It's nothing magical about it. It's just that all of a sudden their fur has a little sheen on it. And if you're stood next to a green leaf, it's going to shine up a little bit green. Now, imagine if that oil stank of wet dog stroke skunk, all of a sudden you've got, it's not much of a theory, but it's so many people report this smell and how quickly it disappears. And like I say, so many people report infrasound. We've got recordings where they show the infrasound. So it's a personal theory that ties all these things together. There's no evidence to support it. It's just my rambling thoughts.
And say
that's why we're doing this. It's fun to talk about. Throw these hypotheses out there. That's why we're getting together on a Saturday to do this. He's like, you want to get together on a Saturday? I'm like, man, and talk Bigfoot? Hell yeah. So, I would ask you guys this question because you just made me think of something, Chris. I want to hear yours and Daniel's opinion on this. Why is it that some people are reporting the smell and other people, when, Wes or whomever the host will say, was there a smell? And they'll say, no, there was no smell. What do you guys think about that?
Could be simple wind direction.
So if I kind of take the more scientific approach on that is, so let's look at gorillas for a minute. It's only the silverback that smells and gives off that scent, and the mother and the children don't. So it's kind of, if you have your males and females and you're young, only the males will smell. So let's say that's how you can go, right, some don't, some do. And say a lot of this I can also relate back to kind of, and slightly moving on to a different theory, because we're going off on a massive kind of
we knew we would.
Yes,
we would.
great. And say, when people say Bigfoot used tools and Bigfoot uses kind of buries their dead, because obviously if we found one bone, it'll solve it immediately. But when I relate it to orangutans, they have learned from humans how to get food. they use kind of tools in trees to get their food, or how to kind of some kind of human gestures they use. Okay, look that to Bigfoot. If Bigfoot have seen us burying our dead, and if the Bigfoot has the same thought process as orangutans and humans, is gonna copy what we do, which would make sense. If Bigfoot copies what we do, you can then relate that. What I try and do is relate it to something that's real, relate it to something that is factually real, and then you go, right, would this be plausible? Would this make sense? And that is how a lot of my theories work. If you get something from real day-to-day life and real animals, and you can relate it to Bigfoot, that's how my theories work. And I think some of them you can go, okay, this is weird. It's like the one footprint theory, where you only have one footprint. There are some explanations, but in my opinion, gone. I can't. Thank you so much.
So Daniel, if we were to distribute an organic deodorant and body spray among the Bigfoot population, would it increase the birth rate? Any sort of a cologne? I mean,
if it does, we could sell it for a fortune if it does.
Yeah, they have that native. They have that native deodorant at Walmart. It's it's organic. It's all natural. I think we should try to do something, for Bigfoot. Maybe we could, the dating would increase, and then we'd have more Bigfoot. So yeah, but no. All kidding aside, I love how you do. I'll donate some DJ skincare formula, for Bigfoot. If they're dealing with dry skin, I'm here to help. Okay. So anyway, and it's all organic Bigfoot. Don't worry, there's no pesticides, none of that stuff. But no, I like the way that you've done that. And one thing I heard in that second interview between Wes Germer and James Bobo Fay, he said, I will entertain any hypothesis about Bigfoot. And one of the things, when you're a dude like Bobo and you've been on TV, you get to go and research in places that the rest of us aren't going to go, because people will pay your plane ticket. People will invite you to their home to research something. He has, because of his fame and his acumen for the topic and the fact that people trust him, he has been able to go places that many, many researchers will never get invited to go. Because he can cross states, boundaries. They don't care. Do I know him? I know him. He's Bobo from TV. And he said, one of the things these are the things I'm not negotiable on. He said that they bury their dead, which you were suggesting, Daniel, that they have a language. And I can't remember what the third one was. There was a third one there that I don't recall what it was, but the two that struck me were the language issue. And the people are like, I'm like, wow, we had a linguist who's heard all of these recorded conversations, a guy who went to the DLI, the Defense Language Institute, twice, and said, I believe the elements there are, form what we would call language. And then people say, we don't know this language. So what I always tell people is, in the absence of absolute evidence, go with the best, most qualified person that you can to take that in. Not saying you have to wholesale take in what they say, but that's the best. So in other words, was this Tic Tac real or not real? Well, I could listen to Mick West, who's a video game maker, or David Fravor, who was a Top Gun pilot and an Air Wing commander that had an in-the-air interaction with a craft that he couldn't explain. And by the way, it disappeared. When he turned the nose of his air. So am I going to go with Mick West, or am I going to go with David Fravor? David Fravor is the best authority on whether or not that was an unidentified anomalous phenomenon that he was that he was in a semi dogfight with. Same thing here. Guy, is it a language? Is it not? Well, me, DJ, what the hell do I know about language? I can barely speak. But if Scott Nelson, 2-time graduate of DLI, says what I hear or what we were taught, that constitutes a language. It's not just, you know what I mean? Like a gorilla does. So that's how I formed the basis of why I believe it's probably a language. So, and then with James, James Bobo Fay said, in everything that he's seen, in all the places that he's been in, all the people who invited them to their property, he believes that they're burying their dead, and that makes sense.
Yeah,
it does. Yeah, and say it's a massive world out there of just theories, but going back to kind of how this conversation started, we don't know a single factual thing about Bigfoot. We know theories, we know kind of guesswork on science. We don't know anything for sure. Until we have a body in front of us, we won't. And it's kind of, and say, but to say that I'm watching the clock and we've been going an hour and 10 minutes. It doesn't feel like that. I'm like that's gone.
Having too much fun.
Absolutely gone. And say it's it's a topic that you could get completely lost in. And
we often do.
Yeah, and say it's.
You are such a good host, Chris.
Thanks, man.
And say so kind of round this podcast up. DJ, oh, thank you so much, mate. It's been amazing, mate.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah.
It's
Thank
been.
you so much. Thank you.
You are very welcome, mate. Anytime.
It's an honor for you guys to have me on here, and we've got this one scheduled with you on, and then maybe after that we can do like an episode with just you and Chris. We'll just do a Bigfoot episode and talk about your evidence and actually, leading up to your event. So let's coordinate. I just sent you that episode on DM.
I just saw it.
Yeah, and it's I think there's some very fresh perspectives when he goes into the history of man. I'm just telling you, you're going to thank yourself if you listen to it, because he goes into possibilities of even, he thinks, the distance from a DNA standpoint between the orangutans and us is quite large, but for the chimp, it's a lot less. He thinks, not that he's recommending it, that there could actually be breeding and stuff like that. So anyway, which would lead to why maybe there is some human DNA that's inside this, in this creature. Yeah.
A question I will ask you very, very briefly. How far are you from Florida?
Not far now. I just moved up here from there, but I'm in Georgia. So it depends on where in Florida, but yeah, about 6 hours. Maybe,
hold on a minute. So in June, on June 8th, you've got the Great Florida Bigfoot Conference.
Ocala, yeah.
Yeah, I'm there as a guest. I'm there as a so if you wanted to be there, I'll be there with my kind of on my table. So and then you can catch my talk at some point. So
yeah, I went last year, so maybe I'll go again. I would lived a lot closer then. Now it's like another 5 hours, but yeah, I'll have a look at that, and if I can make it, it would be awesome, because it's nothing like.
That'll be nice.
It's always the best meeting you guys in person, meeting all of our friends that we made online in person. So I would love to do that. Yeah.
So I'll send you kind of some details over, and we'll have a chat after the podcast. But DJ, is there anything else you wanted to say?
No, I just thank you, everybody's support. What Daniel and Chris are doing. They're going to be having a conference in the UK. I will tell my UK mates about it. And I just wish you guys all the success. I can't wait to speak with you again. Thank you.
Thanks.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
Chris, is there anything else you want to say, mate?
Thank you very much. And yeah, I can't wait to do it again. It's been a lot of fun, and we could go on for days, couldn't we?
Yeah, we could do.
Totally. You can find us on Calling All Beings on YouTube and on podcast Calling All Beings, and I'm call_all_beings on Twitter.
Twitter.
All right.
So guys, as you heard it then, go and check out DJ's podcast, subscribe to our podcast, and have a listen in. But thank you so much, guys. Keep searching, stay mythical.
Thank you for listening to the Mythical Legends podcast. For more information, check out our Facebook group. The truth is out there.